And if I'm gonna guess, I think it's gonna be one of your highest for any of the Lego sets to come.
So we'll introduce our guest enthusiast in the world of Lego and with a particular interest in the medieval world. So this will be our defensibility check of set 6086, Black Knight's Castle. This is our second set that we're looking at with a raised base plate. It's also the ramp that King's Mountain Fortress has used, and we see it used to better effect. So without further ado, we will discuss the accessibility, defensibility, and offensibility of this castle.
Beginning with accessibility, the arrow loops are too high. This particular piece is fraught with this problem. It's just a brick too tall for minifigures. The height of the entryway,
The guest enthusiast pointed out, who was an owner of this set when it was new back in 1992. So I'm saying something of my age. I was 10 years old when I got this for Christmas, and one of the few things I was disappointed with this set was the fact that the knights in full gear could not ride their horses through the main gatehouse. They had to dismount and lead their horse through the gateway. So historically, fairly accurate, but for accessibility and playability, it's going to lose some points on that one.
A little tough. That's because the portcullis you cannot draw it up high enough to get through with those beautiful dragon plumes.
Right.
And the lances don't really fit well either.
No.
The tops of the towers are also inaccessible. Although, as we will see later, we do have a ladder up to the second level. We still have no way up to the tower tops. So the back left tower is entirely inaccessible, so you cannot reach its second level nor its top.
Unless you're a ghost. If you're dead,
This
you
is
can
true.
get up there.
This is true.
Apparently.
As a child, I used to take the ladder from the one side of the fortress and move it to the wall next to that tower so that people could climb up there.
Yeah.
Which was easy enough to do, but somewhat impractical.
Yes. Especially when you take the ladder from one side, you then render the other side inaccessible.
Well, everybody who's going to defend that wall gets up there already, and then you move the ladder.
Oh, I see.
Well, I always assumed the ghost had to get up there somehow.
Well,
This is
yeah.
true.
It's not like you could fly or move through walls or anything.
No.
You'd have to use a ladder in the doorway.
Goodness.
You need to knock first. No one likes an unwelcome ghost.
Yeah.
Ghost squatter. I say let the ghost live in the well, but
Well.
I wouldn't want haunted water.
I know all the ectoplasm.
We also have an inaccessible causeway on the left side of the front entryway. You'd probably have to hop if you were to try and get to that walled portion. A great innovation of this set would be the massive living quarters. We have 2 levels of living quarters, although one is an attic.
And the towers are accessible. There's rooms on the first and second levels of the smaller towers that are on opposite corners. And the corner opposite the living quarters, the Barbican upper level is oh so spacious.
We also have a lot of designated chambers, whether that's the living quarters or the dungeon, or you could also call it a cellar. There's a lot of compartmentalizing that we see in this castle. We also have the addition of a well, which is going to come in handy during sieges.
How the well is on the top of the hill can only be explained by its incredible depth.
I feel like the holy mountain of Jerusalem.
Yes.
The spring flowing up into the Tower of David.
It's about as explicable as the water coming out of the wall in the 90th anniversary set
Right.
as a faucet.
We also have the addition of a secondary entrance or exit, which can function as a drawbridge of sorts.
Yeah, there's no mechanism for it,
Bad drawbridge design.
but it wouldn't be too unreasonable to imagine minifigures lowering that to get in and out through the back. Wouldn't be entirely uncommon to have a very small secondary entrance or escape point.
Yeah. We also have the ladder, which it's not often at this point in time that we've seen ways to get up to the second level. Greatly appreciated. We have a complete circuit with a bit of a caveat.
All of the crenellated portions you have access to on the highest level of the castle. From the attic to the gatehouse, you can walk across those walls the towers are designed so that they're not in the way of it.
We have an armory, we have spear and axe available to those.
As well as a short sword. So you've got a lot of archers in this set, and they can take up other arms for the defense of the castle.
And there's 3 shields, 3 additional shields on the front of the tower, the main gatehouse, with a large tower shield and 2 smaller shields. So if somebody wanted to scale the outer wall and grab one of those shields before trying to defend the interior part of the wall, they're there.
Maybe if you use those 2D like rock print, if you climb up that.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some footing there in that mound of boulders that would allow you to reach one of those shields. Although that means it's accessible to the bad guys who are trying to take over your fortress. So, which just makes it more difficult because then you're fighting people who have dragon shields, and they look like your own men.
This is true.
Well,
That could
so
be dangerous.
I guess that means this castle gets a negative. No,
we saw that strategy used by the Black Knights in the boat, masquerading as Falcon
That's
Knights,
right.
or perhaps vice versa. They just forgot
right.
to switch their shield.
that
Or their
strange
boat.
little Black Knights dragon boat set where the dragon knights all have Black Falcon shields for some bizarre reason.
Yeah.
It's Denmark. It doesn't have to make sense.
Accessibility -5, +8, net 3.
That's a really high accessibility score.
You're really the only spot where you can't make good use of it would be the back wall, the far wall, that's higher than the low wall in the ramp area. Because there's no platform or stepping stone, it's a little too tall for most of the figures to easily access. But it's still good for defense, and you still have a tower that can fire on that location.
Yeah, it's certainly better than King's Mountain fortresses.
On to defensibility. The crenellations are too short.
Yeah, that's a chronic problem with Lego castles on the height of their Merlons and Crenelles. I must apologize. In previous videos, I've had Merlons and Crenelles mixed up. A very silly mistake. I'm not as much of an enthusiast as our guest, so I've made silly mistakes like that in the past.
Well, Paul, it happens sometimes.
For some of us.
Don't beat yourself up over it. I'm sure for most people watching this video, it's the first time they've heard either of those words.
Better than King's Mountain Fortress, which had holes that you could probably climb through. The pathway has some arches, which are oddly placed. Most of them are fairly harmless, but one of them, there's a hole. It could be a machicolation, like a way that you can keep watch on this alcove underneath your battlement. But there's also a hole. Perhaps an assassin lying in wait, concealed there during the night, would wait for some person of importance along that causeway. Or you could keep watch over it there. So it's a confusing spot. It could be used offensively, it could be used to affect by your enemy, and there's not exactly a causeway above it to justify its use as a machicolation, so we've got some odd gaps.
I'm pretty sure it's where the wolf pack prisoner crawled into the fortress and then at night stumbled and fell into the jail cell.
Oh no.
That would
Through
make
the
sense
well?
for a
Yeah,
wolf
through the
pack.
well.
Yeah.
He was just thirsty. He needed something to drink.
Right.
He's like, hey, I see these really nice black knights. I hear they're charitable guys. They go get a drink of water from their well, barring the ectoplasm that's in the water.
Right.
It's pretty good for drinking. And then bam, splash. He's
Oh,
in dungeon.
the poor fellow.
Yeah.
Poor fellow.
And then the rest of the wolf pack, they just form as a means to get him out. Just free
Yes.
wolf pack. I mean, they're basically just protesters. This whole
Yeah,
thief,
right, yeah.
This whole thief thing's totally out of line.
No, really.
Wow.
They're mostly peaceful protesters.
They're
too.
not they're not like those pernicious forest men.
No.
No.
Filthy brigands.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, so jolly as they steal it from you. It's
I know, man.
insult
They never
to
lose a
injury.
smile.
Yes.
It's like, how dare you take such pleasure stealing my hard-won goods that I took from all these peasants?
my yellow studs that I've stolen from those who are bound to the land.
Yeah, that's right.
The drawbridge, unfortunately, has the same problem of having a single rope that travels through the bottom of the drawbridge, so it looks as though there's 2 ropes, but if you were to cut one of these 2, it would render the whole bridge useless.
When you build it, there's only one string that does the work of lifting up the drawbridge. So if you cut one, it's rendered a bridge, not a drawbridge. However, this is probably the best drawbridge design we've seen. It's no longer a tripwire. The wires are very far out to the side. They're not getting in the way of doors like Kings Mountain Fortress, or drawn all the way to the top, as we saw in Black Monarch's castle, all the way to the top of the Barbican. There are a few places where attackers are able to hide. The outside visibility is a little bit lacking. It's not frightfully so, but underneath the living quarters, in the far back corner, there's a couple of spots where perhaps 4 blackguardly folks would be able to hide out underneath your residence, perhaps your nightly palace, so to speak.
And not a good location for someone to hide, seeing as the most flammable portion of the castle is directly above the location. So
Very true, very true.
probably one of the weaker points on the castle.
There are few windows that are of going out to the corners on that side. They go in cardinal directions, but not at a 45 degree out from the castle, so the visibility isn't great. It's Falkwerk over there, it's burnable, and places to hide. That would certainly be the weak point of the castle.
Now, in this particular picture, we see the usefulness of the ghost as he's there to scare people out of hiding.
Oh, yes, yes.
Right.
Without his dedication and merciless moaning, this castle would be considerably less defensible.
It's true, it's true.
Do you suppose he is a friend or a foe? For it is haunting the
That's
property.
true.
Oh.
But he does have his own residence in the far tower. So I'm guessing they made him that room because he's useful. He's
That
probably a
would
very
make
useful
sense.
ghost.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Like
King's,
Casper.
King's Mountain Fortress also
Yes, but
has,
actually
has a
scarier.
house ghost. Yes, much scarier. I find the smile on this guy rather unsettling.
That's right.
It's as unnerving as those forestmen.
Mm-hmm. Who murder you while they steal your stuff and smile down on your corpse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I used to be alive.
Oh, those jolly forestmen. Always up to their shenanigans.
This castle is constructed on a hill, which, as we can see in the box art, is surrounded by a watered moat.
I would put forward that this is an island or perhaps a coastal sort in a lake or a sea. I would put forward that if so, we should imagine the least defensible part furthest out to sea, perhaps, so that the ramp can be used to get to a boat. The large flag can be seen from sea, and the hiding places are of significantly less avail. And perhaps it's a romantic view for the ghost to see those waves and sunsets.
We have the addition of the drawbridge, as well as a portcullis.
That's a combination we've seen before, but with this new portcullis piece, the excellent execution of the draw system on the drawbridge, this is one of the best gatehouse combinations we've seen just yet.
The open portions on the towers helps with sieges, for should an enemy take a tower, they're not protected from the inside, so defenders can then reclaim that tower.
We've talked about the half tower design before, of having towers entirely open in the back so that they cannot be used for defense in event of being taken by the enemy. It's also the reason why you wouldn't have battlements on the other side of your parapet, those crenellations, so that if the portion of wall gets taken, it's not defended from defenders.
Then looking at that back wall, we can see really good Merlon height.
This is my favorite stretch of crenellations so far. It's of a pretty good height for your archers to be able to fire over, and the Merlons are they're really close. It's 3 bricks high. It's so close, and it's very wide, and there's lots of room behind it.
Yeah, so I think one of the greatest strengths of this set is the tower placement. So you had the novelty of a gatehouse and the main tower no longer being either in the middle of a set like most of the earlier castles were. King's Mountain Fortress corrected that by putting it off to the side. But this tower is considerably higher. It commands an enormous view over the gate, not only the gatehouse, but the drawbridge, the entry into this fortress. In addition to that, you have two other towers across from one another, which basically means you have a line of sight around most of this fortress, which is quite good. There's really only kind of a blind sight in the back corner where the entrance is. But if anyone were to get up on the walls or to get within the castle, it would be doom. So as long as there are archers up on those towers, there really isn't any good place to hide, and they have a line of sight covering the entire place. So there isn't one tower that isn't covered by both of the other towers, and there isn't a wall that you can be on in this fortress that can't be shot at from at least two other towers. It's well protected from the inside. The walls are good, that are going to prevent most siege towers from getting near it in the first place. It's at a slant, it's on a slope, it's on a hill. The walls actually go straight up and then jut out again, so they create an overhang, which means getting a siege tower up against it is going to be extremely difficult. All the while, great line of sight from all the towers and a lot of archers to rain fire down on it. It comes with 5 suggested archers. You can convert them over to other soldiers, one having a shield with a crossbow. It's the only crossbow in the set, but nevertheless you can equip the other men with shields and hand-to-hand weapons for melee if they need it. So the tower positioning on this set is quite good. There's no frivolous towers, unlike some of the other LEGO sets where they're just towers there for cosmetic purposes. These towers are useful. Yeah, great advantage.
Defensibility, -4. +8. Net 4.
I think that's our highest defensibility score yet.
I think you might be right.
And if I'm gonna guess, I think it's gonna be one of your highest for any of the LEGO sets to come. This one is a pretty well designed fortress. So
when we get ourselves into the more fantastic era, we'll find that they almost forgot what walls were. For the sake of
and doors that lead
towers
into the mountain and all kinds of other bizarre things that make no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, or
wizards standing on top of a tower that has no accessibility for 5 floors.
Are you talking about Isengard?
I wish I were. There's at least a stairwell in Isengard.
Well, I don't know, not in the top.
Up to the top, I have no idea how he gets up there and down, but at least he's magic, and later
That's
on
true.
we
Well, that's why Tolkien invented eagles. No, I'm thinking of a certain Fright Night castle.
Yes,
shall not be named.
Yes. Eventually it will be named, but right now we won't name it because it's a travesty.
There's something more
light on Denmark.
Oh man.
Something foul.
On to offensibility. We have some outward facing windows. There's one in the living quarters portion, and then a couple on either side of the barbican. And the corner arrow loops, it's a little bit difficult to tell what exactly they are.
They face out 45 degree, which increases the visibility through your walls of defenders, but they're pretty wide. It looks like projectiles can be put through them far too easily.
We also have suggestion of murder hole.
Yeah, so the design of the gatehouse is such that when the portcullis is down, you've got possibly 4 holes on the front of your gatehouse in addition to the arrow loops up in the gatehouse through which projectiles can be put, and then the spaces on the front and back of the portcullis. Since the hole it goes down is 2 studs wide, and it isn't even a stud wide itself, the portcullis, it looks as if you can drop projectiles, boiling oil, all sorts of nasty things upon persons who are attempting to take your gate.
Which, on an interesting note, boiling oil, as famous as it is, was probably never used. It's just kind of silly to boil oil when you can actually just pour oil and then light it on fire. Or boil water, which is way easier to replace. So pouring boiling water would have been something that is recorded as having been done, or just pouring tar down, pitch down, in order to ignite it. But boiling oil, as far as I am aware, is not recorded as having been used in sieges.
It does sound very expensive.
It's super expensive, it's smelly, it's stinky, it's an enormous amount of effort and work.
I'm sure you could get it hotter than water. It has a higher boiling temperature.
It's sticky, and so it's very difficult to clean off. The viscosity is obviously higher than water, but...
Oh yeah, sure. As we talked about, the excellent line of sight, the traps that have been set up, turn the bailey of this castle into an excellent death trap. Anybody who should be able to make it in will find themselves at, in some cases, a very literal uphill battle. You won't last long in the bailey. It's all the open.
Yet if you get down at the bottom here, well, this is before the plate is put in, but there's a plate that goes across that can fit a man on a horse. But if you take the tower shields from the cavalry, give it to a couple of infantry, give them the spears, and have them hold that baseline at the bottom, you can line the ramp leading upward with 4 archers, which means they have to break through a shield wall, all while having arrows fired down on them from above with a great line of sight. It's nearly impossible once the gates have been broken through. Once the 2 gates you've managed to get through have been broken, you're not getting up that ramp if there are any men left alive. So that's actually probably one of the stronger points of the fortress. And since it has a well and good stores, I'm guessing it can withstand a siege for quite a while. And if it has access to the sea, and it has its own fleet of ships coming, bringing it supplies, you are going to have to take this fortress by force. You're not going to be able to starve it into submission. So good luck, because it's pretty well designed for a fight.
Offensibility, -1, +2, net 1. Our initial total is 8. Very impressive.
And then to our auxiliary graces, which we bestow upon sets for excellence in addition to their simple construction. This castle has a sufficient and nay impressive garrison for its size. It seems that we have 10 regular folks, 5 archers, a polearmsman, 4 cavalrymen, heavy cavalrymen, to hold this, as well as a ghost, and perhaps they could press this surly fellow in the dungeon, this Wolfpack member, into service should the Falcon Knights or the Crusaders attack.
A particularly noble Wolfpack member, I might add, because he is wearing a cape.
Yes, a scarlet cape.
I don't know who gets thrown into prison wearing a scarlet cape. But but perhaps this is Will Scarlet. I don't know.
Oh, perhaps.
But anyway, he's not a small-time crook. This guy is a professional criminal, which means he's a businessman or a politician. If we're going with aesthetics, which they're not judging on that,
Yep.
this castle's got to be in the top 1% of castles. So
Sure.
It's well known for being good looking. Now, there's some other really interesting things that came with this set that make it quite unique and which make it sell for so much money these days. There were 6 crests that came with this set. 3 of them red, 1 blue, 1 yellow, and 1 white. These are the dragon crests with the winged ears. These show up in only some sets. They do come later on in a few of the Dragon Master sets, but there are some colors here which are unique to this set. The white dragon crest here does not show up in any other LEGO set before or after this. So that's unique. That particular knight, if you look online, even you'll see that he sells oftentimes for close to $100 by himself. So he's a unique knight. You received multiple unique figures, pieces in this set, which make it highly desirable. The 4 dragon flag, the large flag, is unique to this set. You have quite a number of things in this set. The all desirable yellow wall plates, which only show up in a very limited number of sets. They're great looking pieces. They're awesome for using, for reappropriating into any kind of building during that time period. Of course, there's the really rare pub from the earlier sets that has a red one, but the yellow ones look a little bit better than the red one does. The red one looks a little strange.
Yeah.
So the raised plate is, though it's not brand new for this set, it's really, this is kind of like, you can see in the mind of the people designing these, like the King's Mountain Fortress. This is the King's Mountain Fortress is like the child, and this is the adult variant of it. Like this is it coming to fruition. Yeah, this is them realizing what worked and what didn't work. And any of the weak points in this castle, the low walls, all of these things, they're not a failure of design in the castle. They're really intentionally placed there for accessibility for play. Right? So this castle is
the winch on the outside, the low walls in the back and on the side for the ramp accessibility.
Yeah, every one of those things is designed so that a child can get their hands inside of this set and play with it and not destroy the whole thing. And really, if you raise those walls up and you put some more platforms and ladders to get to a few other places that are inaccessible right now, you have no weaknesses in this fortress.
It's pretty much the perfect castle.
Yeah, it is.
And then, this is our second time seeing the offset Barbican, making it a useful tower. So that's another auxiliary grace for it. So Philip, what's the total for this castle?
With the addition of the two auxiliary graces, we have a total of 10.
This then ties our other best castle. It's also huge, so being able to... Some of the castles for their size suffer on defensibility. The very small ones, it's so much easier to compact good things into it. And it's hard to make mistakes on a small castle that opens up so you don't have to worry about tearing down walls to make it accessible. So for its size, this is by far the best castle we've seen.
Yeah, and apart from the King's Mountain Fortress, this is, as far as I know, only the second castle that did not open.
Mm-hmm.
So it's permanently closed, and there's no way to open it. The only openings on this castle are the roofs. So the red roofs all open up so that you can get inside, but the castle itself does not open up. It doesn't attach to other castles. There's no way to do that with this set. The King's Mountain Fortress, I will add this, even though it does not open, it does have a connector peg at the bottom and is meant to be connected to other sets. It's an oft overlooked part of that set. This set had no connectors on it. So this is a standalone piece. And you can tell, it stands on its own. It has everything that it needs to be its own piece.